Hello, this is Branko Malic. In this podcast, we'll treat a bit a problem we could perhaps name the decline of the conspiracy teams or conspiracy themed content in the internet media, internet-based media. Well, I do believe that some people listening to this would not agree with me if I state that the so-called conspiracy theorizing is on its way, or at least seems to be on its way out in the popular culture, so to speak. I will try to explain my viewpoint and why I think this, but first I would like to put forward a few definitions so that we don't get into misunderstanding. Namely, this term conspiracy theory, as most of people I believe know, is something that American intelligence agency, that is Central Intelligence Agency, used to as a slur to defame people who are asking awkward questions about assassination of John Fitzgerald Kennedy. So this term is not really appropriate. I use it because everybody has heard about it and have some understanding of it. I would call it occult politics if I meant a serious idea of politics that is being conducted not only outside institutions, but maybe sometimes outside of the common sense. Some kind of black magic politics. And there is a problem with this. Namely, I already said this once. What we call conspiracy theory or occult politics research is, in my opinion, in fact, the study of evil. That is, to make it a term more precise, a study of chaos, or an attempt to understand how the world is being run by means of chaos, by chaotic means. And this research is immensely dangerous and potentially detrimental for one's psychic health and for one's mental health. I make some difference between those two terms because by psychical health I mean what is usually meant by mental health, that is being free from some kind of psychical disorder. By mental health, I think I consider the way of thinking, the way the world, one understands the world at his core, at the core of his person. And I consider this to be extremely important, although rarely made conscious by most people, and we all have this mentality that is the relation towards the metaphysical realm, towards principles, and we all have some kind of understanding of this, although rarely examined by ourselves. And when this faculty of ours, so to speak, goes awry, it is a literal catastrophe. And it is a catastrophe that works like a chain reaction, leading to mass hysteria, because people usually deteriorate mentally in this sense as groups, not so much as persons or individuals. So catastrophe is always on a larger scale than one individual ending up in a lunatic asylum, as is wont to happen when you have psychical problems. The conspiracy theory I'm talking about here, I will talk about here, is somewhat a broader term that encompasses a viewpoint that the world is run by cabals that I want to rule it by centralizing it in some way. This is not entirely false standpoint, and this is in fact the very close to the first definition of conspiracy put forward by Abbé Baruel, Augustin Baruel, French Jesuit, who wrote arguably the first book considered to be an analysis of conspiracy that brought about a great world event, that is French Revolution. He was what makes him significant, besides that the fact that this is really a serious and still very relevant book, and that that he was first to use this method of thinking, is that he considered that plot to overthrow the French monarchy and the Catholic Church in France was a global part of a global political intention. It was completely unique at that time. This is not something you had before, or maybe somebody can rectify me on this. I don't know for any other source who saw the things in this light. Perhaps there is some, so I invite somebody who maybe heard about this to contact me. But historically, conspiracy theory is a modern thing. It was not present in Middle Ages. It was not present in ancient world. You had conspiracies, of course. You had from Catilina's conspiracy in Old Rome to, for instance, Jean Froissart, the French chronicle, lamenting the conspiracy and the treason in the on the French side in the wake of Battle of Poitiers, I think, or Battle of Crécy, when they incredibly lost to smaller English army. But none of those expositions are really talking about a world unifying conspiracy. And this is very important, because this is what conspiracy theory, quote unquote, is. There is no way you can extract this global moment. Now, what I see, of course, in this alt media circle, or not only alt media, but circuit of these ideas, which are older than internet, and which are, in my opinion, in 20th century, mainly American made, is that it is losing power to convince. Most of those outlets, most of those authors deserve to lose this power to convince, in my opinion. Most of the media, bigger media outlets, alt media outlets, that all have this conspiracy pastiche or occult politics analysis pastiche, be it Newsbad, just to name a few, or some with which I collaborating, are becoming echo chambers. When I open the site of some of such portals and go to read, for instance, an article or listen to the podcast, when somebody utters or writes the first sentence, I know what the last sentence will be. They are completely predictable. Now, if they were telling the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth, that would be great, because it would be of course predictable, because there would be no mistakes in what they expose. But they're obviously not. What happened is that most of them are just spinning a certain worldviews that were built on a partial interpretation of the world, especially a global or foreign policy, global politics, that is then elevated to an all-encompassing principle. I will give you an example how this happens and how it almost happened to me, because best way to figure these things out is to criticize one own self. For instance, I invested a lot of time and effort in studying and analyzing the UN documents that are subsumed under the umbrella of sustainable development or ecological balance, as it was called in the 70s. That is, these documents that are one most famous of them is Agenda 21, and I read Agenda 21, all 364 pages of the damn thing, and wrote a long, very long analysis of the document that was, although long, it is just merely an introduction. And what I found in those documents is, well, that they really are blueprints. And Agenda 21, mind you, is considered to be a blueprint, like an operational constitution of the global society, that are really totalitarian in their essence. Some of them openly so. Believe it or not, Agenda 21, to a lesser extent than some previous documents that were written as our common future, that was written as a preamble to Agenda 21 as a setting of problems, whereas Agenda 21 that was presented in 1992 at the Rio Summit was making an operational plan out of these premises. And the main premise of UN at that time was overpopulation, that a number of people in the world has to be drastically reduced by all means necessary. Not by all means necessary, but all means humane, that is by abortion, so they considered it humane, by birth control, and by controlling of human life to a minute details. Now, I really don't see how can anybody convince me that people that put together those documents had anything else in mind, because they are very open about it. Sometimes you have to read between the lines, but they are very open about it. Yet, I can't say that we are faced with an either-or choice, whether we will reject the sustainable development, which is, by the way, one of the cornerstones of Lisbon Treaty, the Constitution of European Union, in which I virtually live in, because I am on the outskirts, and Croatia's membership in European Union doesn't really give me much the feeling that anything is changed. Does it mean so that this is either-or choice? Either we will be engulfed in this post-human sustainable world, or we'll rebel against it. Well, while studying those documents, I had a period that was thankfully not very long when I felt that. When I felt that I am faced with a behemoth, ideological behemoth, bound to control the world, that I must somehow either rebel at or succumb to. And the other option is the first thing that strikes your mind, because it seems so powerful, all-encompassing, and so on. But this is an illusion. And this illusion stems from the lunacy of the people who construct such absolute ideological projects, bids for absolute power, because they are complete determinists. They think that these blueprints they write are absolutely unstoppable. They will be implemented, and everything will be for instance, under the umbrella of sustainable development. Yes, yet this does not happen. It happens to some extent. I think in the farther west, it happens to a larger extent, but not to a maximal extent they want to see. To a large extent, NATO is under umbrella politics of NATO is sustainable development politics. I recognize terminology they use, making it probably the first gay army in the world because it's so this sustainable, this green lunacy is so gender fluid in itself that it's really counter propositional to have an army of soldiers imbibed with this politics and ethos. This is ridiculous. And sustainable development is a failure. European Union is a failure to an extent. It is an ideological project in this sense, because at the first sign of trouble, it just crumbles. I mean, this ideology, because it is so devoid of reality in more than few senses. And I do urge that you check out on Kali Tribune my older work where I wrote and talked about these problems, and there were some interviews. I remember my first interview on Sunday Wire with Patrick Henningsen was about this in the wake of the UN meeting in 2015, and it was a great talk. And Patrick himself knows quite a bit about this, because before he was into this global warming problems and so on, and he kind of had a good grasp of the issues and was pretty even-handed about both sides of the debate. I just wish he was equally even-handed in treating the Russians against the rest of the world, because he completely succumbed, in my opinion, to Russian manipulation or Russian infowar that engulfed the South media. And this brings me to other points. So I just gave you an example of one of these conspiracy factoids or conspiracy theory subjects that is based in reality. It is not true that it is unreal, but it is not all powerful. It is not all encompassing. And now we have many more. And I just have a feeling that this kind of thinking, where you have this idea of this global bid for power, but some shadowy elites or not so shadowy elites, and us, the people, mostly taken as isolated individuals, nodes in the internet network, good intentioned, but completely individualistic, opposing this, I think this is passé. This was always an illusion in itself, but I think now it completely lost steam. And what astonishes me is that it seemed to happen overnight. The crucial moment was election of Donald Trump, when it became obvious that most of those alt media are practically reiterating Russian foreign policy terminology and objectives and values, so to speak, in inverted commas. And while people talk about Russian agents and people on Russian payroll, I don't at all think that 99.9% of people, Americans and Brits or other Europeans, reiterating, parroting Russian politics are paid by anybody or really manipulated by anybody but by themselves, because the Russians offered the hero image, the image of resistance towards precisely this new world order, as it were. and people fell for it. Whoever had ego stronger than his ability to criticize oneself fell for it. And I saw very intelligent and very, in my opinion, at least principled people fall for this completely. They bit a line, hook, and swallowed line, hook, and sinker. This is, I think, one of the reasons why this is losing steam, because it lost value. It is not valuable anymore. Not that insights that were proposed, for instance, by people like James Corbett, who I still respect, but I'm not so much respect as much as I like, who is good at what he do. But he's completely out of ideas. I try to follow his podcasts. He always tends to be funny, and he has this light-hearted manner, and he's always easy on the ears to listen to. He is in crisis. He has nothing much to say, although there are many things to say, but not in this vein. In the vein of the world being run by some Eastern establishment American millionaires and their projects, and that this world is completely succumbing to this. This is not factual situation, I think. This is the world where you have many globalist projects. I speak ad nauseam and write about a Russian neo-Eurasianism, which is a Russian Novi Svietski Mir, a new world order, Russian a la Rus. That is a Russian new world order, which is comparable to the combination of Nazism, National Socialism, and Bolshevik communism, and explicitly so, in its most let's say developed ideological form, in Alexander Dugin's political metaphysics, political sorcery. Also, we have this alt-right and the whole range of right-wing political movements that co-opted this sphere of alt media, and the left and right started to merge together. In many ways, and I don't feel sorry for either of them one bit, but things got very confusing. This is partly a story in itself. The conspiracy, I think this conspiracy research, as it was understood in the last 20 or so years, will have to be discarded by people who want to push forward, to push further, to shed a new light on the old facts and discover new facts. It will just have to be let go, because all of those various attempts at the explanation of the world and politics, or some kind of eschatology of battle of good and evil, are becoming frankly empty, hollow, sounding like something, like when you strike some hollow piece of metal, some empty can. There is nothing anymore in it. That is not to say that most of it is untrue. As I return to my example, sustainable development is a globalist totalitarian system. It really is. But the world is not turned into sustainability. Posthumanism is the drive to merge the humans into machines and revoke humans, to erase humanity. It is that. And Google is posthumanist, yet I don't see this happening, and I don't see the urgency, the panic, the the need to fight or die. No, I don't see this. This may be because I myself am fighting for years, in a way, in my way, according to my, not so much in my way, but according to my abilities and to my position in the world, material position and geographical position. So you get used to these things, you get used to think a lot, talk a lot, clash a lot with people, or even being politically active. So that new shocks you don't understand as shocks anymore, but as part of everyday life. People who never thought about those things would be shocked when they start to discover this. But I think, as I said at the outset, that conspiracy theory, as understood by most of the pundits talking about it, is at the end of its tether. Now, if you took David Icke seriously at the outset, well, you have no one to blame but yourself, because he's the paradigm for many of those people. The other being Alex Jones, who is a conman, media conman, and it is obvious even to me, who am not American and not so well versed in this mentality where you can be a performer selling snake oil through some kind of those products, health supplements, virility supplements, by expounding some kind of fringe politics, analyzing conspiracy and so on. He's a complete fraud. And most of people, some of whom I know in this line of research, who go by the definition, defining themselves as analysts, geopolitical analysts, philosophers, or something like that, used philosophy salesmen. They are the same thing as Alex Jones, although a little more subtle. Not much, but a little. And most of people are like this. And now you can see Alex Jones hosting Alexander Dugin. Dugin talking crap, of course, on the show. Both of them talking on both ends of their mouth. I don't. The last interview was so funny, but I do treat Dugin too often, so I decided not to make a video about it. Just to say a few things. When any self-respecting American should not let Dugin speak, have a floor on his show or everywhere else, unless he answers some questions about his political views as expressed in his earlier works. But he won't do that. And now conspiracy theory with Alex Jones, you see that it was always a scam. Alex Jones was always the scam. Alex Jones was a gateway drug for many people. Even in this my part of the world, because you first encounter him, then others, or David Icke. Such, although I don't think David Icke is a con man. I think he's just eccentric and lost. I don't think he's a bad man even. Or even to the contrary, I think he's just a really a principled, good man, but mighty stupid and unrealistic and ahistorical, unrelated to world he lives in. Well, that's his problem now. This is the outline of mainstream alt media and conspiracy research and so on. Alex Jones, such people. And now everybody can see what the Alex Jones is, and everybody can see what most of those people are. And their media or publicist or video, cinematic, radio outlets, internet outlets, are now just echo chambers, and they will remain lingering as echo chambers as long as there are people who will consume the things they are spinning around endlessly. But they got nothing to do about research, nothing to do about truth, nothing about anything, in fact, but entertainment and people trying to be a part of groups, of exclusive clubs, of feeling themselves intelligent and so on. So to conclude, I think that in the future we'll have something to say about this on Kali Tribune, probably more, because it's a very interesting problem. There is even possibility I would just